Welcome, colleagues, to KSU's Research with Relevance Friday Features. We are excited to bring to you our 5th season of Research with Relevance. It seems very hard to believe that we have done this show this many times. The focus this semester is the Chairs and Directors Showcase. So if you remember, last semester we highlighted several of our deans, and this semester we're excited to highlight several of our chairs and our directors of different schools and programs. We are live streaming this show here today from the new headquarters of the Office of Undergraduate Research in the Academic Learning Center on the 5th floor of the ALC, so come and visit us sometime. This is beautiful space for our undergraduates and their mentors to really engage in the research enterprise, so we're excited to share this with you. My name is Phaedra Corso, and I'm the Vice President for Research here at Kennesaw State University. And our goal from the very beginning with this Friday Features show is to highlight some of the outstanding faculty researchers here at KSU, and also to create a forum that we can come together and share our research expertise. So before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping tips with you. The first one is, if you'd like to submit a question after we see the video, I please encourage you to do that. And the way to do that is to go to research@kennesaw.edu, and we will be monitoring those questions as they come in, and I'll ask them on your behalf. Next, I'd like to share with you that this episode, as all of our episodes, is being filmed, and you'll be able to watch this over and over again at your leisure on our YouTube channel. And our schedule for today's show, or for the next hour, is that we will start with a video featuring our guest today, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I have a set number of questions that I'll begin with, and then I'll be reading your questions. So with that, let's begin. I am very happy to introduce our guest today. Dr. Paula Jackson is serving as the interim chair of the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Organismal Biology. I'm sorry about the pronunciation on that word. And also the interim associate dean for research in the College of Science and Mathematics. Paula holds a PhD in tropical plant ecology and physiology from the University of California in Los Angeles, and she joined KSU in 1999 as an assistant professor in what was then the Department of Biology and Physics. As a tropical plant ecophysiologist, love that title, she is interested in the interplay between water availability, plant photosynthetic rates, and plant distribution patterns, which we are going to hear about. She has spent more than 20 years conducting collaborative research, which is the title of her presentation that she's sharing with us today, providing students with field experiences near and far. Paula has mentored more than 60 undergraduate students, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to be here in our new undergraduate research space, and which has resulted in many regional and national and international presentations with students as first authors. For her efforts, she has been recognized by the College of Science and Mathematics as the Distinguished Teacher Award in 2010 and a Distinguished Professor Award in 2014. We're very happy for you to be here, Paula, and with that, let's see the video.
My name is Paula Jackson, and I currently serve as the interim chair for the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Organismal Biology, and as the interim associate dean for research in the College of Science and Mathematics. The arc of my research has been strongly dependent upon and enriched by collaboration with colleagues and undergraduate and graduate students at both Kennesaw State University and abroad. The 3 projects I will be talking about embody the strongly collaborative nature of my research. I am, by training, a tropical plant ecophysiologist, and my first encounter with tropical cloud forests awakened in me the strong desire to learn more about them and delve more deeply into plants. This eventually led to graduate school. Tropical dry forests, the ones that I will be talking about here, are, well, different. This type of ecosystem is fascinating because of the diversity of species who have extraordinary mechanisms to handle the extremely dry and hot conditions they live in during the dry season. Tropical dry forests are among the most endangered terrestrial ecosystems of the world. Together with colleagues at the Centro de Investigación Científica de Yucatán in Mexico and colleagues here at KSU, we received a National Science Foundation grant in 2005. This particular NSF grant worked to actively engage the research of faculty with undergraduate students in their professional field over a 4-year period, with 4 to 7 students joining the studies abroad per year. We examined the mechanisms used by plants to deal with the very dry and hot conditions that occur in the dry season on the Yucatan Peninsula. We also followed the process of regeneration of these forests after disturbance. Most of the peninsula has very shallow soil and lacks surface water. The soil of Yucatan is primarily karst limestone, which means that many of the rocks are soft and dissolve in water. Fresh water is thus underground in the cenotes, a natural pit or sinkhole resulting from the collapse of limestone bedrock that exposes groundwater. If we look at the roots of plants growing down to the cenote, many of them do not reach the underground water. Different species of plants seem to modulate their leaf production and loss based in part on local environmental factors, such as the distance to water sources. This research made us strongly aware that many of the concepts on tree phenology, the patterns of flowering, fruiting, and leaf production and loss, were described for plants from temperate environments, and some concepts, such as deciduous and evergreen trees, may not entirely fit tropical dry forest plants. We found that in certain places, in the drier areas of the peninsula, differences in the microclimate were large. For example, the temperature below the leaf litter may be much lower, perhaps serving as a protective layer for seeds to germinate. Microclimates may play a larger role in plant survival than previous research has indicated. This research unveiled many additional questions about these ecosystems, but more importantly, provided undergraduate students at KSU with the opportunity to participate in research on an international level while studying abroad and receiving class credit. Always interested in improving my teaching practices, I wanted to explore the effect of the use of technology on students' academic outcomes when they develop and test their own research questions, especially in STEM disciplines. Born from the realization that in the digital era, with instantaneous access to a huge amount of information anywhere, anytime, would necessitate a shift in the teaching paradigm. Given that many sources of information are utilized, such as transferring information from student to student or engaging with primary sources, other online users, authors, and websites, students need to have mechanisms to investigate and generate new information, mechanisms to distinguish information, and think critically to determine what is valid. This realization led to a collaboration between information sciences and education colleagues at KSU. In 2010, we received an NSF grant for the development of KSU's Wicked Biology course. This course used an inquiry-based model where students worked in groups to develop a scientific question, discriminate between sources of information on the internet to find valid and reliable evidence, synthesize the information, and develop a mechanism to communicate their finding. We found that for each iteration of the course, at least one group of students seemed to be transformed, from struggling to successful, in notable ways through the experience of the course. We found 3 group types: high engaging, low engaging, and transformed. High engaging students worked hard and did well throughout the semester. Low engaging did not engage with the material in a productive way despite support provided. Transformed started out less engaged but were transformed into active inquiry learners. Our goal then became to investigate characteristics of the transformed group to see if we could identify ways that we and other instructors may help learners become more involved. Wicked Biology mirrored the scientific inquiry process where asking questions and strong collaborations take center stage. I would say that I'm a curious person, and this curiosity has led to asking questions in different arenas, some of which have been beyond my formal academic training and have led me to seek others with a common interest and with the background and expertise needed to delve into these questions. My current research project brings together a KSU team of faculty and students to find out more about the longleaf pine ecosystem. The longleaf pine is a high-diversity, pyrogenic or fire-dependent ecosystem that used to cover about 92 million acres across the southeastern United States. Despite its importance, only about 0.01% of its original cover still exists. Our team consists of plant ecologists, microbiologists, quantitative ecologists, and many undergraduate and graduate students. Through our research, we are seeing if we can link processes that happen at the microscale in the soil to above-ground processes in the plant community. We are using molecular techniques to decipher the soil microbiome and see how it could change across different plant communities. We are exploring if we might be able to link some of the soil processes and changes at the microbiome level to changes in the above-ground plant communities. We think that this information may be able to help inform restoration efforts of this endangered ecosystem. While we are in the beginning stages of our research, I look forward to collaborating with students and faculty again to conduct research and be part of another transformative study. The common denominator of these projects is their strong collaborative nature. Science has always relied on collaboration. We rely heavily on teams of researchers and subject matter experts that can communicate efficiently and help inform on best solutions through their different perspectives. At a time when problems are complex and information is easily accessible, we as researchers need to be capable of synthesizing through the vast amounts of data generated and help prepare our students to do the same in their research at Kennesaw State University.
That was great. That was really great. So just to share with our viewing audience for a second, we have a brand new person in our office in StratCom, Megan Lowney, who is responsible for creating that video. And you did a great job, so thank you very much for that. And Paula, your research is amazing, and I can't wait to just dive into the questions. To remind our viewing audience, you can send in your questions at research.kennesaw.edu. Research@kennesaw.edu is what I meant to say there, so thank you. So Paula, let's start off with a couple of personal questions.
Oh no.
I'm sorry, but I think I always want to know when I meet new faculty or a new person at KSU, how did you come to this great university, particularly because your background is in South America and you went to, you did your PhD at UCLA, which is on the West Coast. So what attracted you to the East Coast, in particular to Kennesaw?
Okay, so very good question. I think that what I liked the most was when I came to interview here, and the collegiality among faculty was really exceptional. And within the department, it was palpable how well they got along with each other. The other thing that I really liked was that there was an infrastructure for undergraduate student research, and that was quite rigorous. And so the department at the time had a system whereby students had to have 3 committee members as undergraduates on their projects, and so it went a very strict review. And I think the last thing that really caught my eye was that there was a plan to start a graduate program. And we did, in fact, develop the MSIB, the Masters of Science in Integrative Biology. So,
Well, we are very glad that you're here. So you talked about 3 different research projects in your video. So I'm going to start with the first one, and that is the tropical dry forest. So you have some great pictures in the video that give us a sense of what it looks like, but I would love for you to just take us into that forest and tell us what is the temperature, what are the sounds that you might hear, what are the plants that you might see?
So a tropical dry forest, a lot of people are not familiar with tropical dry forests. Everybody thinks about the tropical rainforest. With a dry forest, it's going to be very different if you go in the dry season or if you go in the wet season. We always traveled in the dry season, so it was very dry, very hot, a high probability of dehydration very fast. The plants then have mechanisms to protect themselves against us and mainly against herbivores. So a lot of them have spines and hairy structures that you don't want to come in contact with. So we would always dress up for the plants and wear long pants, long sleeves, hats. In terms of the sounds, a lot of birds going around, but our main focus was for the plants, and and very, very dry and very hot.
And so thinking globally, what is the percentage of our planet that has dry tropical forest relative to rainforests?
Okay, so I don't have that percentage off the top of my head, but if you saw in the video, we did try to incorporate a world map of tropical dry forests, and their percent, unfortunately, they have the dubious award of being strongly endangered, so their proportion is even lower than tropical rainforests, although the tropical rainforests also have a lot of deforestation taking place.
And so in the video you mentioned that that they're endangered, but what are the root causes of that endangerment?
So the main cause are humans, human encroachment and habitat destruction. The dry forest is very easily burned, so that makes it very easy to clear the area and for people to move in. So it's mainly humans that are urbanizing the areas.
And how far north in the Americas do the dry forests go?
Okay, so all the way up into Mexico, so pretty high up, because you're still within the tropics, but you're still moving up north.
So I know your focus is on water access and how that may impact plant growth. What are some of the other environmental factors that impact the plants, not just the water access?
Oh, in terms of the tropical dry forest, one of the things that we were really surprised about, we took an infrared gun, and so we would point at things and measure temperatures. And the temperatures on the surface of the leaf litter would reach things like 50 degrees Celsius and up to 60 degrees Celsius, which is hugely hot. So temperature differentials are very important. And what we call evapotranspiration and the deficit of water in the air are factors that are going to be very important for plant survivorship. So in addition to water, temperature, I would say, is the primary factor.
And so in the time that you started doing this research until now, have you seen even more dramatic impacts?
So in a way, yes, because the frequency of fires has increased. And in fact, in areas in Mexico, it's dangerous to have glass because glass with sun can start a fire. So the increase in the frequency of fires is one of the things that we have noticed. Yeah.
So tell me about your students. You talked about getting course credit, so I'm assuming that you led a study abroad or 2 or 3 in your lifetime. And so are these primarily only undergraduates that were engaged in that research, or did you have graduate students as well?
So The first study that I talked about, it actually started as a study abroad. And so I mentioned these infrastructures that we had in place for undergraduate student research. So the students would propose, would set forth a proposal and to do a study, and then we would go to Mexico, collect the data, and they'd come back and present it. It was mostly undergraduate students from Kennesaw, and we did have graduate students from Mexico. Oh. And so we had a collaboration. At that moment in time, we did not have the masters in place yet.
Do you still keep in touch with some of those students? Have they gone on to do big things?
They have. They've gone on to do big things. And when I was looking at some of the pictures that I pulled out, one of the students that is featured is he also got a master's degree at Kennesaw. He got a master's in statistics, and he's gone on to do really great things. And we have most of the students have found employment, and several of them have gone to graduate school. So it's a pretty impressive group.
That's great. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to switch over to your second, what you talk about with. Really, it's STEM education research, which is, I think, very much in line with the Center for Innovative STEM Education Research that Brian Lawler is forming now. But I was very interested to hear what you were talking about with the students and identifying 3 different kinds of students in your biology course. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what were some of the predictors that would move a student from not successful to successful.
So, so one of the things that we noticed, we sat around and had conversations after we taught the course several times, and we were very surprised that almost every iteration of the course, there was a group of students that exhibited this transformation. Mm-hmm. So it was usually a group, because students in the course had to do group work, and their projects were in groups. So we tried to look at what were the characteristics of the group that allowed or that made this transformation possible. One of the things that we noted, so there's several factors, but I would say that having a group that was not homogeneous and having at least one person or more that took a leadership role. So they would take upon themselves this moving the project forward. And then other things that people have found as well is this capacity for self-regulation and growth mindset, so that you can tackle a problem, you can learn and move things forward. You don't have to stay with that surprise of, I don't know how to do this.
So when you say homogeneous, are you meaning by gender, by race, by discipline? What were those characteristics?
Yes. So I mean, some of the groups, they got together because they had very similar types of approaches to things. And when we had groups that brought together different types of expertise, so different mindsets primarily, different forms of thinking and different skills. Mm-hmm. And so when they identified their strengths a priori and then contributed to the group based on their strengths, that made a difference. When they all had similar types of strengths, then there were areas that they couldn't fill, and those kind of lagged behind.
So has it changed how you approach teaching now and what you say to your students when they're self-forming into groups to do projects?
Yes. So we try to identify at the beginning somebody that wants to take the leadership role. It doesn't have to be an individual, it can be more than one. And we also have students, and we did that as well during at the beginning of the project. They took some psychological tests themselves to try to identify what areas they felt most comfortable with, and then designate what they wanted to be in charge of. Mm-hmm. So we do take those things into account and bring that up front.
That's great. Are you still doing research in that area?
No, I'm not doing research as much in that area. I've moved into the into the longleaf pine primarily.
So before I start to ask you about the longleaf pine, I know my own research, I have moved from one topic to another over the years, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it's for not great reasons, and sometimes it is. So I want to know, what's been the motivator for you moving from this area to another area?
Yeah. Well, when I started with the Wicked Biology class, it was kind of a confluence of factors that we were seeing all this information existing on the internet. We were looking at what is happening in education today, and we kind of coincided, the three individuals that worked on this project, in thinking that we have to do something about how we are teaching, and we have to take these factors into account, and that was a strong motivator for us. Some of the individuals that I was collaborating with have moved to other places, either within the institution or outside of the institution, and so that kind of led to my not continuing down that line. And in parallel, I was doing my ecophysiology research, and so that started to pick up a little bit more, and so it shifted in that direction.
Great. So let's now talk about the longleaf pine.
Oh, the longleaf pine.
So this is your current area of research.
Yes.
How did this come about?
This came about because a lot of the things that I'm doing with that are related to plants kind of led me to soil and led me underground and to what is happening at the root, at the level of roots. And then a colleague asked me to come to see the longleaf pine ecosystem because they thought it was, it's a very beautiful place and in type of ecosystem, and that I would be interested in taking a look at it. I missed that field trip because I didn't wake up early enough, but it sparked an interest. And when I did go and take a look, it's absolutely beautiful. It's breathtaking. You should come one of these days.
So what is beautiful about it? Like what would I see if I was walking into this area?
So it has what we call a savanna type of ecosystem. So that means that you have a grassy surface interspersed with big trees. The pines are huge. I think that it may be me, but I think that when we separate ourselves from the concrete system that we're in, from asphalt and concrete, and we go into nature, it just opens a different awareness.
So is it true that the gopher tortoise is in this ecosystem?
Yes,
and have you seen
correct.
them?
I have not seen them, but that is true.
I'm in love with tortoises, in
Okay,
case
so
anyone
maybe
wanted to know. I have a 50-pound tortoise at home, so I am seriously committed to the tortoise. Just as a side note, it's not a gopher tortoise. I am now talking about my own life, and I apologize, but
that's fine.
But so
that is fine.
Other than the tortoise, it's a very interesting ecosystem because of the savanna, right?
And it has a very high level of diversity, probably some of the highest levels of diversity outside of the tropics. So you put those things together, it's an endangered ecosystem, it has high levels of diversity, yes. Yeah,
and I think, I don't know if I saw it in the video or just in reading about this ecosystem, but it's down to 3%, 4% of what it was originally.
Yes.
And so what has happened, and how long has it happened for us to get to this low level?
So very interestingly, so it also is human related, but probably fire suppression, because this is an ecosystem that survives on fires, on natural frequent fires, and so suppressing fires together with other types of activities that we are doing are probably the main causes for it to be in such an endangered state. Mm-hmm.
So I'm way out of my field here, so just bring me back to reality. But the wildfires that Australia experienced, I thought I remember hearing that it was similar, that there was not burning done, and because it
Right.
wasn't, the lands were kind of open up to just go.
Right. So when we suppress fires, one of the things that happens that you have a lot of undergrowth, and you have a lot of plants, such that when the fire does happen, it's going to, in many cases, it's going to be stronger and larger than it would be if you have regular natural cycles of fire. So you have a lot of kindle that builds up, and so yeah.
Not
so
the e-reader,
Not-
but kindling, yeah. Good. So I want to encourage everyone to send in questions, because I haven't gotten any yet, at research@kennesaw.edu. And we do, this is not an open forum, but we do have a few folks in the audience. So if anyone wants to ask a question, let's bring the microphone over there. Won't be on camera, but you will be on audio.
All right, nobody wants to see me. Hello, Paula. Can you? I assume I'm audible. All right. So I want to go back to your first experiment, right? So you noted that the roots weren't extending all the way down to the groundwater, and the cenotes get pretty low in the dry season. So the plants, are they shutting down photosynthesis completely, or are they finding a different source of water in order to maintain at least some low level of photosynthesis?
Okay. Yeah, so excellent question. So one of the things that we found was that different plants had different types of strategies that they used during the dry season. So one of the plants that we were looking at, it starts to decrease its photosynthetic levels before the dry season. And by that, what I mean, it starts closing its pores a little bit. And so it starts retaining water in its trunk. And then it loses its leaves during the dry season, but has enough water stored that it can flower. So some trees can use these different types of mechanisms so that they can continue even during the strong dry season.
Like a cactus.
Well, yeah, so cacti are, yes, so they do most of their storage or all of their storage in their stems. And they have, their leaves for the most part have transformed into needles and into spines so that they don't lose water through those surfaces.
This is a personal question, Paula, and I apologize. But I'm imagining your home being beautiful with plants everywhere that you know everything about, that are healthy and strong, unlike the home that I live in. And so please tell me that this is true, that I can live vicariously through you.
We do have a lot of plants. We also have a lot of art. And it is, I would say probably the art makes it quite beautiful. Yes, it is. We'll have to have you over one day.
I would love that. All right, let me keep going. So on the longleaf pine project, which is your current work, I believe in the video you talked about students being involved, but I am curious to know whether you have funding for your project, and then whether you do or you don't, what kind of student involvement?
Okay, so we've been able to cobble different types of funding for the project. We're working on...
That word cobble,
cobble,
that's a scientific term that we use in the research enterprise to fund our research.
Yes. One of our faculty has a Mentor Protege Award, which is an award for materials and supplies to work with undergraduate students. And I neglected to mention that my students are the absolute best students. And so two of them have undergraduate, have IRCA awards, undergraduate and research and creative activities awards from the university. and we have some funding from indirects that I have from previous. So yes, we've been able to cobble together.
Good. And that's the way it's done, to keep it going.
Yes, to keep it going. And your second question was undergraduate students. Was that how the number of undergraduate students that we have? Yeah, so we do have a number of undergraduate students and one graduate student right now. And
so describe to us what is the field experience for one of these students?
Oh, okay. So the nice thing about the longleaf pine ecosystem is that you don't have as many plants that are attacking you. But you still probably have to wear long pants and long sleeve shirts. It's a kinder environment. We still go with, wear hats, and you may have seen in the pictures that the students wear, we all wear these fluorescent vests so that we can be seen at a distance.
I have two questions that have come in for you.
And I think there's a microphone.
And we have one in the audience, so we'll go to the audience first.
Did you?
Audience first. So Paula, first, thanks for sharing this time with us. I don't like the look on your face. Okay, so I'm going to ask 3 questions coming from different parts of the presentation.
Okay.
So if I mess it up, just help me out. So first of all, on the student side, I think you talked about things that really have piqued my interest. So I know where to come when I have problems. So let me ask you 2 questions then. First, you talk about mindset of students. How could we harness that or even probe that and use that to be able to help the students better, given the deluge of information that you referred to in this presentation? Yes. I mean, this is quite fascinating, so I'll let you try and deal with that. Okay. So that's number 1.
Okay.
The second question that I have is, how far is a desert from this tropical dry forest that you're talking about? Because I was not imagining that we would be talking about that here. So do you have any information on that for us? Then the last set of questions I have deal with your mention of microclimate levels in the presentation.
Yeah.
You didn't expand on that. It would be nice if you would stretch that a little bit. I think I'm very fascinated by that.
Yes, yes.
And then finally, we can touch on the longleaf pine, the microbiome. Are you expecting to find in different communities that the microbiome is going to be different, or what kind of adaptations are you expecting here?
Yes, right.
Now, don't ask me to repeat the questions because I won't remember what I asked.
Right, and I think maybe I just need to give you the seat on the couch and let you just go ahead and take over. That was excellent.
Okay, so I'll try to remember these. So the first one was about the mindset of the students, and so I'll tell you a little anecdote, perhaps. So one of my undergraduate students that is now getting a PhD, he came back one day to visit and indicated that one of the things that I had said had really helped throughout his process. And I thought, well, what could that be? But he indicated that what I had said was that to get a PhD, you didn't have to be a genius. You had to work really hard and stay at it. And he indicated that on several occasions he thought that the task was too big for him and that he really was not equipped to do that. But he remembered that it was more about, dedication, putting the hard and the perseverance. And this was a first-generation student. And so I think that part of that, this growth mindset, is this notion, this recognizing that you might be capable of these big ideas, of taking them to fruition if you start and you put the time in and you do the work.
Yeah.
So I thought that that was very, very telling, and I strongly appreciated that, that comment. And so if we are able to communicate to the students that they have the capacity to address these issues and to self-regulate and to move forward, I think that's going to be a very important thing. And then the second question was.
I think it was about a desert.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So the tropical. I know there was another question in there, and I'll try to remember that. So the tropical dry forest has a strong rainy season, so which distinguishes it from the desert type of environment. So it's the amount of rainfall, the amount of rainfall. So typically, deserts have very, very, very low rainfall throughout the year, and the tropical dry forest has this maybe 3 to 7 months of dry season that is followed then by a rainy season. So they do get sometimes a lot of water, maybe about 1,000 millimeters a year, which is much less than a tropical rainforest, but still substantial during the rainy season. And you had a great question.
Microclimate.
Oh, okay. So that. So the difference. So one of the things, we thought there was something wrong with our infrared thermometer. We measured at the surface of the leaf litter about 50 degrees Celsius, and below the leaf litter it came down to 40. So there was about 10 degrees difference in temperature. Some of my colleagues are looking at bromeliads and epiphytes, which are plants that live on top of other plants. And what they found is that these differences in temperature at a very small scale, so on a single tree, you can find differences in temperature and humidity that will lead to the possibility of these plants setting seed and sprouting. So we hypothesize that in the dry forest, this difference in temperature below the leaf litter as opposed to on top of the leaf litter may allow for the seeds to germinate under the leaf litter with the protection against these very high temperatures. So those small differences in space with big differences in temperature is what we're referring to as microclimate. You have these little environments that have, lower temperatures, higher levels of humidity that allow for reproduction to take place.
Great questions. A few more have come in, so this is thanks to Paula for her great presentation. I have a question on Paula's view on undergraduate research considering her great experience. She mentioned that something that attracted her to KSU was the infrastructure already in place for undergraduate research. How has the growth in KSU population over the years influenced her experience in working with students? What are the problems, risks, and what are the opportunities, in your opinion, in terms of the growth in our undergraduate population?
So the growth in our undergraduate population has made it perhaps in some instances more difficult to be, because when you want to oversee many students, it's difficult to give them the same amount of supervision and support that you might want to. So it perhaps reduces the number of opportunities in terms of the percentage of students that can have the experience. So I think that here is where the ability to have them work in teams comes to play, and to develop, so that they can develop these mechanisms of self-reliance and work together as a team. I know that that's one of the things that I've put in place for my undergraduate students. They're thrown in the pool in the deep end, go swim. No, they're very good at teamwork. They're very good at scheduling. and organizing and tag team.
And it's such
Yeah.
it's a life skill.
Yeah,
We don't work by ourselves in
Yeah.
very many fields.
yeah.
Here's a question from Ellen, who used to be here, if you remember.
Oh, yes,
Hi,
yes.
Ellen, wherever
Hi.
you are. I know where she is. I'm just not going to mention that university. Ellen's question is, hi, Paula, where is the field site of longleaf pine study, and what are some of the keystone species associated with the longleaf pine?
It's so we're working at the Sheffield Wildlife Management area. It's in Paulding County, about 45 minutes from here. And what was the rest of the question? Sorry.
Species, keystone species associated with the longleaf pine.
Oh, great question, Ellen. So a lot of the grass areas are thought to be very important to the survivorship of the longleaf pine because they allow for some of the fires to take place and to be continued. But we also have, you mentioned the gopher tortoise, which is considered a keystone species as well. And when Ellen asks about keystone species, the idea is that there are some species that their presence in an ecosystem maintains or supports high levels of diversity. So if you remove that species, the levels of diversity decrease.
Great. Okay, here's another question. I know some trees communicate with each other. Have you done any work with trees that do this? If so, what language do they speak? No, that's not the question. That's not the question.
They speak my language.
The question is, if so, how does this affect the rainforests?
So yes, there are plants that communicate with each other. And there are some studies that are indicating that there's a lot of communication that takes place underground through the mycorrhizal ecosystem, which is a combination of roots and fungi. And there's some evidence that there's movement of nutrients between plants. There's also some evidence of plants. So we have a colleague in the department that is actually looking at if plants can detect, if parasite plants can detect their host and how they find their host. So there are different types of mechanisms whereby plants can communicate with each other, and they can also find help when some of them have high levels of herbivory. Some chemicals attract predators. I do not work in that field.
That's a
I
pretty
do
good
not work
answer
in that
for
field.
not working in the field, though. Do we have another? I think we have another question from the audience.
Yes, Dr. Jackson, as someone from a very different field of study, I appreciate hearing everything that you're studying and the work that you're doing. And I too was staggered by the decline in the population of longleaf pines throughout the region.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if we, as residents of the region that tree calls home, can do anything to support them and make sure that they're here as a natural resource for us in the future.
Thank you. That's a great question. And so I'm just getting started in this area, but I'm looking at some collaborations with the DNR and collaborations that have been started by some of our colleagues here, and they have set up different types of symposia and things of that sort to try to keep the information flowing in terms of what we're finding. But I would definitely reach back out to you with a more concrete type of an answer for that, because that's a great idea. Yeah.
And I'm going to follow up on that question, which is that if this is an endangered ecosystem, what are we doing to preserve the land? And is it the case that I, as a private citizen who owns a little tiny space of land, have this tree on my land, and how would I know that?
So there are efforts right now for restoration of the longleaf pine, and the restoration efforts are taking place with a combination of fires and herbicides, very prescribed fires and herbicides and things like that. And so as an owner, if you had if you had land, I would suggest that you allowed for these prescribed fires and for these types of restoration efforts that are taking place. Now they are prescribed and they're done in a very controlled way, but those are the types of things that we're trying to do for restoration. What our specific project is trying to do is to try to see if there's something that we might be able to find out that could help inform the different types of restorations, or maybe improve how these are done, or facilitate or make them run a little bit more faster.
Great. So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of our guests, which is, imagine you have a wealthy donor in front of you who says, Dr. Jackson, what can I do for you? What could you imagine in particular with the longleaf pine, since that's your current area?
Yeah.
What could you do with not unlimited funds, because that doesn't exist, but a generous donor?
So I think
I'm required to ask this question. Just kidding, I'm not. That's right.
So I think that I would have an approach maybe of concentric type of donations, or I would first look at the students, the human aspect, the funding undergraduate and graduate student, their research, so that we could find out more about what's happening. I think that then the next level would be, the materials and supplies. But then I think it would be really good to start to incorporate communication. Once we have this information, then let's have people like Joelle and like Megan come into play, so that we can translate this science and the findings that we have and communicate that to the general public. So we start building informative videos and mechanisms that make it very easy for people to understand the science and put these into place.
Great.
Yeah.
Start with the students first and build
Start
from there.
with the students, undergraduate, graduate students, faculty, yes.
So living here in Georgia, we've got this long pine ecosystem that you've been studying. What other aspects of this part of the world are appealing to you as a scientist, especially as it compares to where you were raised and where you've studied abroad?
So, as you have seen, I am very easily distracted and interested. But what I found, I think, is that if you start looking into something and you start learning about something, it continuously opens new avenues. It's like a continuously branching system that makes it more and more interesting. So I don't know, in terms of different ecosystems here in Georgia, I'm not sure what I would say, because I'm just getting started in this area.
And where do you present your work? Is there a national conference on longleaf pine researchers, or is there another group of researchers? Because you talk a lot about collaboration and working with people who are outside of your field and how exciting that is in team science. So where do you present your work so that others who might not think that this matters to them, that you come together to do the next thing, next big thing?
So up until recently, I was presenting my work mainly in places like tropical conservation and tropical ecology types of meetings. So the venue has changed depending on the area of research that I'm looking at. And I have not yet begun to present with where my students have. They've presented at the Association of, at the ASB, the meeting of the Society of Biology, So that my students have made presentations from the longleaf pine findings. I haven't yet. They're the front runners.
And how has COVID impacted, if it has, your research?
I think in some ways it has impacted the research, and very similarly to other people, with meetings going virtual, lab meetings being virtual. For the field, though, we take to the field, or we used to take to the field, what we call the COVID bucket, which included disposable masks, included a squirt bottle with ethanol, and so we would clean our instruments if we needed to share instrumentation, and we would use face masks if we had to come in close contact with each other, and otherwise we would have walkie-talkies that we could communicate at a distance in the field.
What kind of space, when you go out in the field, are you in miles or acres and acres? What does that look like for a student?
So we can be. It's relatively easy to walk far enough away from each other that we are no longer in visual contact. We try not to be too distant from each other and to stay in touch. But what does that? How large of a distance? I'm not sure I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, well, we are coming to the very end. I don't see any more questions coming in. I want us to for those who are here, to give Paula another round of applause for her wonderful, wonderful research. So thank you so much, Paula. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to send a few thank yous, as I always do, to the team that puts all of this together, including Heather Hedgepeth, Megan Lowney, who I introduced you to before, Joelle Walls from the Office of Undergraduate Research, staff Amy Buddy and Jennifer Harb. So thank you for letting us use your space. And then, of course, from our broadcast and event AV staff, we have Jess, Chris, and Jeremy, who I'm considering now to be part of the Office of Research. So thank you for that. So the next Chairs and Directors Showcase will be on February 18, and we will be featuring Sunanda Disanaika, Chair of the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering in the Southern Polytechnic College of Engineering and Engineering Technology. Sunanda is a new faculty member here at KSU, and she is amazing. So I'm very excited for you to see her research. So please stay tuned for more information in the coming weeks coming from the Office of Research. And with that, we're going to close. And as usual, I will end with stay safe and healthy and happy and have a great weekend, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.